Okay, welcome to the Geopolitical Forum. We have a smaller group today, we're more intimate. Although we're open to Zoom today, so we have 2 people on Zoom. Hopefully, we're gonna grow in that part too. And also thanks everyone to participate because the program, your thoughts, opinions, and questions and rebuttals are important part of this program. And we're gonna ask you to wait till you, Justin, finish speaking, which is about 30 minutes. Then it's free for all for everybody. Just hold your fire until he's done. Today's topic is Pacem terris. In English, it's called Peace on Earth. It is a papal encyclical by Pope John the 23rd. And it was significant, and it's entered into United Nations archives. The speaker today is Justin Tucker. So the Pope addressed that to the peace on earth, not to the only Catholics. That was the first time the Pope addressed this papal encyclical to all people of goodwill. He said all men are goodwill. It's 1960. Today is all people, all humankind. So it was significant that way too. And also he delivered that only a few months after the Cuban Missile Crisis. You know, the crisis that brought the United States and Soviet Union dangerously close to nuclear conflict. And Vatican served as intermediary between White House and Kremlin in the negotiation process. Of course, it resolved. That's why we're live to talk today. And since then, 1962, 1963, a lot has happened globally. Soviet Union no longer collapsed, is no longer there, and Cold War ended. U.S. came out on top, sole superpower of the world, and then Cold War 2.0 started with a peer adversary, peer competitor, China, and then today, unfortunately, we have 2 hotspots simultaneously. It's called Gaza and Ukraine. We have war, destruction, death, human suffering. And in Gaza, we also have this desperate humanitarian crisis. And a couple of months ago, you have India, Pakistan conflict. They always had a tense relationship, but it flared up under some spark, and they had a week-long conflict. So what I'm trying to say is, since 1962, 63, we had a lot more nuclear armed nations. And the 2 hotspots the biggest hotspots today, both are involved like nuclear powers. So that makes the peace on earth ever more topical today. Here to discuss this important topic is and sort it out for all of us, help us to discuss this whole thing, is Justin Tucker. Justin is a movie buff. He also has a degree in movie making, filming, and he's a libertarian activist living in Chicago. He's an executive director of the Libertarian Party of Illinois and the organizer of Blue Line Libertarians and the Libertarian Party of Chicago. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Justin Tucker.
All right, I asked you guys, thank you.
I'm gonna adjust the little bit.
So I've already asked some of you guys if you're registered voters. Any other Cook County registered voters in the room? No? Dang. Just gonna ask you to sign petitions. Okay, so thank you, Eric, for taking a chance on this topic. Who here has read the encyclical? That's fine. You'll get some of the greatest hits from it. Who was raised Catholic or came from a Christian household? All right, so some of the stuff you guys might be familiar with. Pacem and terris, peace on earth. The full title of this encyclical is on establishing universal peace and truth, justice, charity, and liberty. Like snakes on a plane and hot tub time machine, the title is like right to the point. And it's also a treatise on the rights of man, as we'll discuss. So some of you guys might be thinking, like, why am I wasting my time hearing about what some leader of some buoy religion has to say on these topics? But as Eric mentioned, a lot of what is discussed is relevant today. The threat of nuclear war, destruction, the fear of that is more intense now than it's been since the Cold War. And the new Pope has not wasted any time discussing topics of peace. So, for example, the other day, Pope Leo, who from Chicago, let us continue to pray for the end of all wars. The 80th anniversary of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki have reawakened throughout the world a rightful rejection of war as a means of resolving conflicts. So whether we like it or not, the Pope is a world leader, and as such, his words and actions do have consequences. Pacem and terris was a landmark document in what's called Catholic social teaching. And according to the Chicago Archdiocese, Catholic social teaching is, quote, a rich tapestry of wisdom that addresses building a just society and living in holiness and transformation amidst the challenges of modern society. So it's basically a body of teachings from the church on how the church, individuals, the state interact in modern society to achieve the common good. So, whoa there, comrade, you might be thinking, the common good. So there's a lot of misconceptions about where the church stands on politics. A lot of people accuse the church of, enabling socialism or being sympathetic to socialism or communism. But time and again, the church has rejected communism, such as practiced in the Soviet Union. It also doesn't endorse monarchy or the divine rights of kings, and we'll discuss that a little further. How the common good is defined in the Catechism: the sum total of social conditions which allow people, either as groups or as individuals, to reach their full fulfillment more fully and more easily. Pacem and terris was promulgated by John XXIII on August 11th, 1963. That was Holy Thursday. That was the Thursday before Easter. That's when Christians worldwide commemorate the Last Supper of Jesus Christ and his eventual arrest before he's crucified. The previous year, the Pope was Time Magazine's Man of the Year, partially because he was his leadership was very admired during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that is the context of this encyclical. He died June 3rd that year, so just a couple months later, of stomach cancer. So this was like the last, he knew he was dying. This was like his last will and testament, more or less. So let's dive into Pacem and terris. As Eric had mentioned, it was the first encyclical to be, in addition to the clergy and the church, to all men of goodwill. And that is very significant because that was the first time it's ever happened. So because it was addressed to everyone, where people had it begins like this: peace on earth, which man throughout the ages has so longed for and sought after, can never be established, never guaranteed, except by the diligent observance of the divinely established order. Paragraph 3 says, God created man in his own image and likeness, endowed him with intelligence and freedom, and made him Lord of creation. So does this sound familiar to you guys, that language? Endowed? To me, I think he's making reference to our Declaration of Independence. And I looked up the Latin. The Latin word is traditum, or traditum. Sorry, I've never studied Latin, so maybe you're mispronouncing it. That translates as endowed. So it seems like this word was intentionally used to invoke the Declaration of Independence, which was in turn a sort of paraphrase from John Locke. Paragraph 7. Men's common interests make it imperative that at long last a worldwide community of nations be established. So that concludes the introduction of the encyclical. There's 4 chapters. First chapter is order between men. And this is probably the most, this is the portion that deals mostly with, dealing with the rights of man. And I find it to be the most interesting, and I'm probably going to focus more on it than some other parts. Any well-regulated and productive association of men in society demands the acceptance of one fundamental principle, that each individual man is truly a person, is in a nature that is endowed with intelligence and free will, and such he has rights and duties which together flow as a direct consequence from his nature. These rights and duties are universal and involvent, and therefore altogether inalienable. Okay, sounds familiar, right? This is after World War II. And in the after World War II, the church had a lot of negative sort of PR, because it seemed to have collaborated with some of the powers that had devastated Europe. And of course, I'm sure no matter where you were, on what side you were in World War II in Europe, it was devastating for all. So you have the clergy in the aftermath of World War II, basically witnessing the destruction, and more or less the church has now accepted the liberalism that it had so long sort of rejected. Because prior to this, the church more or less endorsed state sponsorship of the church and promoting the church over other religions and civic life. We consider man's personal dignity from the standpoint of divine revelation. Inevitably, our estimate of it is comparably increased. Men have been ransomed by the blood of Jesus Christ, for he has made them sons and friends of God and heirs to eternal glory. But first we must speak of man's right. Man has a right to live. He has a right to bodily integrity, to the means necessary for the proper development of life, particularly food, clothing, shelter, medical care, rest, and finally the necessary social services. In consequence, he has to be looked after in the event of ill health, disability stemming from his work, widowhood, old age, enforced unemployment, or whatever, through no fault of his own, he is deprived of his means of livelihood. Man has a natural right to be respected. He has a right to his good name. He has a right and freedom of investigating the truth, and within the limits of moral order on the common good, to freedom of speech and publication, to freedom to pursue whatever profession he may choose. He has a right also to be accurately informed about public events. He has a natural right to share in the benefits of culture and hence receive a good general education and a technical and professional training consistent with a degree of educational development in his own country. Furthermore, a system must be devised for affording gifted members of society the opportunity of engaging in more advanced studies. Also among man's rights is that of being able to worship God in accordance with the right dictates of his own conscience and profess his religion, both in private and in public. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, this is unprecedented for the church. This is the church's first sort of reference to religion, freedom of religion, to your own conscience being an inalienable right. And the church would later elaborate on this in a document called Dignitatis Humanae, which I also highly recommend reading. And that was just a few years after this. Continuing on, human beings also have the right to choose for themselves the right kind of life which appeals to them, whether it be found in a family, in the founding which both men and women enjoy equal rights and duties, or to embrace the priesthood or religious life. The family, founded upon marriage freely contracted, one and indissoluble, must be regarded as the natural primary cell of human society. The interests of the family, therefore, must be taken very specially into consideration in social and economic affairs, as well as in the spheres of faith and morals. For all these have to do with strengthening the family and assisting it in its fulfillment of its mission. And of course, Catholics would, who do have a whole system of education, of course, support and education of children is a right which belongs primarily to the parents. In the economic sphere, there's evidence that it is evident that a man has the inherent right not only to be given opportunity to work, but also be allowed to exercise the personal initiative in the work that he does. And this goes on and on and on. I mean, they do just kind of run the gauntlet of like what makes of what man's rights are. And a lot of these rights are positive rights in that they require some sort of, outside obligation. But this was also influenced by the UN Declaration of Human Rights as well. So I don't know if you ever read that, but that is certainly a long list. And Pacem and terris also has this long list. And I love to continue going on with it, but it just doesn't make for a good me reading it. And you should read it for yourselves. It's a lot of good stuff in there. And I do find that a lot of Catholic social teaching does reconcile itself with libertarianism, as you may have just heard. You can see why. The second chapter is called Relations Between Individuals and the Public Authorities. And it says this: a regime which governed solely or mainly by means of threats and intimidation or promises of reward provides men with no effective incentive to work for the common good. And even if it did, it would certainly be offensive to the dignity of free and rational human beings. Authority is, before all else, a moral force. For this reason, the appeal of rulers should be to the individual conscience, to the duty which every man has voluntarily contributing to the common good. But since all men are equal in nature and natural dignity, no man has the capacity to force internal compliance on another. Only God can do that, for he alone scrutinizes and judges the secret counsels of the heart. So that's also something that's very Lockean, very Jeffersonian. Rights, or rule is consent, or we consent to be ruled, at least theoretically. The chief concern of civil authorities must therefore be to ensure all these rights are recognized, respected, coordinated, defended, and promoted. That each individual is enabled to perform his duties more easily. Thus, any government which refused to recognize human rights or acted in violation of them would not only fail its duty, its decrees would be wholly lacking in binding force. So, if government is violating the rights of the people, it's illegitimate. It's also, a Lockean, Jeffersonian notion. Now, chapter 3 is called Relations Between States. And this is one of the more juicier topics. This is where a lot of Pacem and terris got a lot of respect here. With respect to states themselves, our predecessors have constantly taught, and we wish to lend weight to their own authority to their teaching, that nations are subject of reciprocal rights and duties. Their relationships, therefore, must likewise be harmonized in accordance with the dictates of truth, justice, willing cooperation, and freedom. Relations between states must be regulated by justice. This necessitates both the recognition of their mutual rights and at the same time, fulfillment of their respective duties. States have a right to existence, to self-development, to the means to achieve this. They have the right to play the leading part in the process of their own development and the right to their good name and due honors. Consequently, states are likewise in duty bound to safeguard all such rights effectively and to avoid any action that can violate them. Just as individual men may not pursue their own private interests in a way that is unfair and detrimental to others, so too would be criminal in a state to aim at improving itself by use of methods which involve other nations in injury and unjust oppression. There may be sometimes that it is a clash of interest among states, each striving for its own development, which when differences of the sort arise, they must be settled in a truly human way, not by armed force, nor by deceit or trickery. A man amongst personal, among man's personal rights, we must include his right to enter a country which he hopes to be able to provide more fitting for himself and his dependents. It is therefore the duty of state officials to accept such immigrants, and so far as they are good on their own community, rightfully understood, permits to further the aims of those who may wish to become members of the new society. So that's something that's something we see here in Chicago with the Venezuelan community, which has recently been welcomed into our city. Now, this is where this is perhaps the most interesting part of Pacem terris. We are deeply distressed to see the enormous stocks of armaments that have been and continue to be manufactured in the economically more developed nations. This policy is involving more vast outlay of intellectual and material resources, with the result that people of these countries are saddled with great burden, while other countries lack the help they need for their economic and social development. There is a common belief that under modern conditions, peace cannot be assured except on the basis of an equal balance of armaments, and that this factor is the probable cause of this stockpiling. Thus, if one country increases its military strength, others immediately roused by a competitive spirit to augment their own supply of armaments. And if one country is equipped with atomic weapons, others consider themselves justified in producing such weapons for themselves, equal destructive force. Consequently, people are living in great grip of constant fear, and they have good reasons for their fear, for there is certainly no lack of such weapons. Moreover, even though the monstrous power of modern weapons does not indeed act as a deterrent, there is a reason to fear that the vast testing of nuclear weapons for war purposes can, if continued, lead to serious danger for various forms of life on Earth. The Western United States has a lot of polluted land, and it's very sad that that happened. Hence, justice, right reason, and the recognition of man's dignity cry out insistently for a cessation to the arms race. Stockpiles of armaments which have been built up in various countries must be reduced all around simultaneously by the parties concerned. Nuclear weapons must be banned. So this is a very authoritative statement from the Pontiff of Rome. This carries a lot of authority. It seems to me what he's trying to say is nuclear weapons are sinful. Furthermore, relations between states must be regulated by the principle of freedom. This means that no country has the right to take any action that would constitute an unjust oppression of other countries or unwarranted interference in their affairs. The fourth chapter, which is also interesting, is relationship of men and of political communities within the world community. And this is more or less the church giving hope to the United Nations. The United Nations was established, as well known, in June 26, 1945. To it were subsequently addressed lesser organizations consisting of members nominated by the public authority of the various nations entrusted with highly important international functions such as economics, social, cultural, educational, and health fields. The United Nations organization has a special aim of maintaining and strengthening peace between nations and encouraging and assisting friendly relations between them based on the principles of equality, mutual respect, and extensive cooperation in every field of human endeavor. It is therefore our earnest wish that the United Nations organization may be able progressively to adapt its structure and methods of operation to the magnitude and nobility of its tasks. So it gives hope to the United Nations that this can be a tool of bringing peace on earth. And some libertarians might be like, well, the United Nations isn't, they're not cool. Well, less prominent libertarians have supported international organizations because the rights of men don't end at borders. So we may have individual criticisms, and those criticisms may be legitimate of the United Nations. This was written at the dawn of that and has good sort of vibes, hoping that it works. And that's probably why it was well received in the United Nations, because the Pope was recognizing that it could be a vehicle for peace. Now, what was the impact of Pacem and terris on the world? Eric had already mentioned some of those. One instance, a few days after the publication, President Kennedy read from it during a speech at Boston College. Boston College is a Catholic university. He's the first Catholic president. So he was very delighted to share this at that time. It was also the first papal encyclical to be published in its full entirety in the New York Times. And the United Nations Archives in New York recognized its significance and has placed it there. It inspired people to participate in the civil rights movement and various other peace and justice movements. And the ideas that it has that it expressed have been elaborated on in subsequent encyclicals. I mentioned one earlier, Dignitatis Humanae, which is about religious liberty. But there's just others. Each pope has contributed, since Pope Leo XIII has contributed somewhat to Catholic social teaching. So I'm really looking forward to see what the current Pope, Pope Leo XIV, has to write about the ideas of America kind of influencing the church to take a more liberal stance on human rights. I think is a testament to the ideas of America. And Father Isaac Hecker, pray for us. He wanted to have the church be influenced by American ideas, and I think that after he was considered to be a heretic, we're now seeing the church adapt American ideas into its teaching. So that's kind of a victory for us. It's a victory of the Enlightenment. And that is all I have to say about Pacem and terris. So thank you so much for listening. We can open it up for questions or comments.
I'm in the process of moving. Everyone.
So, yeah, you were talking earlier about, you know, you don't want people to, you know, shove religion down their throat, you know, your throat. I mean, the position of the church is, yeah, you shouldn't do that either.
How's it going, Eric? Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Oh,
How's it
okay.
going?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm able to join, and thank you for help me fixing that.
Thank you, Oliver. Olaf. His name is
Okay,
short,
okay.
short for his name. Because you weren't here in the beginning, I was just asking everyone, wait till Justin finishes the speech, then we can open up to the floor. You can share your thoughts and then rebuttal or question.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
We had until 2:30, 4:30 for
Oh,
that.
okay.
So that's why when you join, your Zoom was muted. Now I'll mute everybody, so it's up to you if you want to mute or not. But you're certainly free to, floor is yours if you take it.
All right, all right. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, I do have a question because it's true, the Pope's words in that document strikes me as very common to the spirit of the United States, if you will. But as far as I know, United States is not based on the founding philosophy. It's not based on Catholicism, but based on Protestantism. So my question is, maybe you can tell us if what the Pope said in 1963 was probably different from what Pope was said in 1863. Probably the Catholicism has evolved after all the reforms, all the split away, branch out. They feel the pressure, the world is different. They kind of merge, or if not merge, but evolve into the like a mainstream, if you will, the Western philosophy. Does that assessment kind of make sense?
That's what I think happened too. I think that you're right. A lot of clergy, a lot of popes were against liberalism, the Enlightenment. Because a lot of the Enlightenment, you know, was not explicitly Protestant, but if you're going to be sort of free thinking, you know, back then, you know, Catholicism was the status quo. So, you know, if you're going to be a lot of the great liberal, you know, philosophers were descendants of religious dissidents in places like England, where the Church of England put down different religions, but also in the continental Europe, where the Roman Church was very strong. So I think you're right. I don't think though. I mean, I don't. Just because, say, John Locke was an Anglican Protestant, therefore these ideas are Protestant. I think that, you know, there's other Catholic philosophers that have said similar things before that. But the church more or less backed the sort of like, you know, monarchies and was very resistant to change. And you're right. If you read Catholic social teaching over time, and we've got about 130 years or so of it, it does change over time. I mentioned the thing here about religious freedom. If you read previous encyclicals, they talk about how just societies need to hold up the church because the church is the true church. We need to protect it, you know. So, and then the church prior to that was also doing what's called concordances, which were agreements with governments that they would protect the church. So there was a concordance that the church had with Germany, Nazi Germany, which they didn't uphold. And it was supposed to be an agreement that the Nazis would protect the church. Didn't happen, but It also was looked at as collaboration as well. So you are right. I think a lot of Catholic thought was very reactionary against the Enlightenment up until about World War II. And it's then you hear this Jeffersonian language in their documents. And Dignitatis Humanae, which I mentioned earlier, also has the same vibe. But it uses religious freedom as the base freedom, and everything goes from there. And of course, it's the Catholic Church, but and the Creator that is mentioned in the Declaration of Independence is a reflection, I think, of trying to, and especially in the American colonies, you had Quakers, and you had Congregationalists, and you had Presbyterians, you had Catholics, and you had deists and Unitarians who had non-traditional views on God. So Creator kind of had that sort of influence, where with this document, it's more explicitly, it's the God of the biased Catholic God, Christian God. That is the creator in the sense that it's but yeah, it has changed over time. The church was certainly took them to the 20th century to warm up to these ideas.
But I guess philosophically, like, why should they warm up to the ideas?
Why should they?
Like, is this Pope's encyclical really authentic, or is it that the church is sensing that times were changing and we're like, oh, well, we want to stay in our privileged position, so we better start shifting what we're saying. So, like, why should I believe the Pope?
So, Sign of the Times is actually a subheading in this encyclical.
Nothing against the Pope.
Here's I can't speak for the Pope and where he's like, why did the church finally accept these ideas? Was it to preserve itself? Maybe. Were they being insincere? I don't think so, or I mean, I hope not at the very least. But there's the in the Bible, I think it's the Gospel of Matthew, maybe elsewhere as well. Jesus gives St. Peter the keys to heaven. What you bind on earth, I will bind in heaven. What you loosen on earth, I will loosen in heaven. Satan will not prevail over the church. To me, what that says is that the church can adapt with the times. So can the church, with its power to bind and loose, change its mind about political theory? I think that there's a biblical precedent that says you can't. So binding and loosing is something that Jesus does give to the church. So, but I can't read. I think John the 23rd was very sincere, though, because he was even suspected of being communist, which back then was kind of like being called woke, So, and even there's a film, an Italian film called The Gospel According to St. Matthew, which was directed by an atheist homosexual, and he still dedicated his film to Pope John the 23rd. So, and even people, because the encyclical never really talks about, other than the United Nations, it doesn't discuss what's going on in other countries like other encyclicals do. It doesn't quite date it. So because it doesn't explicitly call out communism, communists were able to read this and be like, oh, okay, cool. So this was actually a uniting document. And even the Soviet Union, and and even John Kennedy, as I mentioned, this appealed to a lot of people. I don't think it was insincere because I think John the 23rd, in retrospect, has been given a lot of accolades and recognition by all sorts of people, and as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of the church witnessed the horrors of World War II, and like let's let's. I think they wanted to try something else after all that.
I just want to say, if you want to sit down, feel free to. So I was suggesting when you're giving your speech, it's great for you to stand, but it's going to be long. So at any point in time.
Okay, please, Eric,
Oh, yeah,
please,
wait, Marson, he's asking a question. Hold on,
yeah,
you next.
yeah, based on everything I've heard you
Hold
say.
on, let Marson, he's in this room, he raised his hand first. So
Oh,
when I,
okay. I'm sorry. I really can't tell what's
hold on,
going
you
on. Just
next,
let me know
hold on,
when
you
I
next.
can.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Okay.
here for, I'm keeping the order, keeping the
Okay, thanks.
sequence, who goes first, right? Yeah, Marson, please.
I was just gonna ask, like, so the horrors of like, when the Native Americans were, killed off by the, I don't know, civilized, educated Christian, or Catholic people. That didn't ring a bell, when there's like mass graves of, little children at churches, that didn't set any bells up, but like World War II did. Like, what is like? I'm sorry, like this topic is very loaded. Not just that part of it, but like the entire thing of the UN and everything else of the US, the fact that that the church may have.
There may have been people during the conquest of the Americas who were against that. I'm sure you could find examples of that. Probably not as many people should have been against that as there was. But that also was hundreds of years prior to this document. So, and I mean, I don't endorse everything the church has ever done. But whatever. I think that just because it might be wrong, if a doctor is smoking a cigarette and tells you not to smoke, is it wrong for them to?
Yeah, just
like, it's like that make them like, well, you smoke, so it can't be, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff the church has done. I don't support it all. The church doesn't, to the degree that they, I mean, there's a lot of other problems that are still in the church that we can talk about. But, I don't think that makes this document any less.
Yeah, I just, I guess I feel like there's some of the examples you gave that the document may have been based off of, are very specifically, like cherry picked for the West. Cause like, liberties like, sexual expression stuff, we're very conservative in the US, and in comparison to other countries. Like there are other countries that are way more free with that stuff. So like when you say, a lot of like those liberties were influenced by Americas, like they could have been influenced by a lot of different countries that are way more than we are.
I'm sure they could have been, but the words that they used in this document, I mean, did it not sound Jeffersonian to you? You think it did?
Yeah.
I think it did. Did anybody else? I mean, you don't have to think it does. I mean,
I'm not familiar.
I'm sure there was way more influence than I never claimed that they were only influenced by us, the Declaration or John Locke. And I'm sure there are a lot of other influence. I mean, these guys are Italian, And I'm sure they got their own influences as well. So, I mean, I never claimed that it's only the United States that influenced it. I'm sure lots have gone into it. And if I'm just scrolling through the footnotes, it looks like they do cite a lot of the Bible and other church documents. So it looks like they're also influenced by previous church teachings and by scriptures and stuff like that.
Okay, Ola, please.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask you a question based on your own perspective from the very beginning of Christianity till right now, the present moment. Do you believe like Christianity has done more harm or has been more helpful to the human race?
I don't know. I think you can weigh certain things. I don't know all the bad things. But also I don't think that the church is just what the leaders do. I think that, the people who volunteer at the soup kitchen who aren't clergy, that's the church. And I think that stuff does a lot of good. I don't know. I mean, I
Okay,
know the church
okay,
does a lot.
okay. Let me try and rephrase the question. Maybe it might help you like make a decision on what I'm trying to get across. Um, I'm saying based on because number one, for the main fact, like religion is attached to God. It gives like religion, not even just Christianity, religion itself, a very supernatural position in our lives, whereby they basically indoctrinate us on how to live our lives. And at some point, it felt like a revelation from God because it seems like, wow, okay, maybe it even felt more like a civilization. But what I'm getting at is like, do you feel like it still feels like a revelation from God, or it has been manipulated in such a way that is actually like a manufactured structure right now just to benefit the people in position of power? Because you're saying like it still does a lot of good in this, which I agree with you, but the damage I feel it does is bigger than just people volunteering to sweep the church or because at this point it's almost like they are the only institution that can actually go face to face with the government based on the type of power they have on human minds. They are the only institution like all this do because now I find the human race stuck in a position between the government and the religious institutions. So it's either you're being controlled by the government or you are being controlled by religious institutions. So that's what I want to know because at this point, maybe the government are not really catering to our needs. Do you feel like churches are catering to the needs of humanity right now?
I think that I think that a lot of the state has sort of stepped in and on some of the functions of the church. Um, I think that, I mean, you asked a lot of stuff and I didn't write any of it down.
No,
So,
just tell me, just talk to me freely, whatever you can remember or whatever stands out to you, you could address
but
that.
I think that certainly when there is a merger of church and state, that things can get ugly. And I think that's one of the things the church saw after World War II that they wanted to reconsider. Um, I think probably a lot of what this church teaching is to correct itself for some of the horrible stuff that it had advocated for in the past. Um, I certainly am not the first to admit that it's very irrational to believe in somebody who is killed and raised from the dead as the Son of God, certainly is not rational, and certainly having the church supporting a notion, an irrational notion, can probably lead to some pretty bad stuff. But I was raised as a Christian.
Okay.
I've tried to shed it all, but I just can't. I just like it too much. Like I like Christianity. I like the Gospels. So it's my interest in Christianity is more or less because I like it, and it makes me feel good to talk about it and to share stuff like this with other people.
Oh, okay, thanks. I'm sorry to cut you off. The main point that I want to get across also is based on the situation, the condition of the human beings right now, like the human race, I mean, there is just too much power being centralized between religion and like the bureaucrats. There is a lot of power, and if we go to the government side of things, it's about the law of the land, the rules and regulations, the policies. If we go to the religion side of things, they are not basically catering to the human needs. They are almost like in cahoots with the government based on the perks that they get from the government. So at some point, the human race is in a situation whereby I feel like the only religion that can prove to the human beings themselves will be humanity. And humanity has to be the basic religion for every human being right now that goes beyond being white or being black or being Christian or being Muslim. Because if we cannot see God in your humanity, then you are definitely not from God. But if we can see the presence of God in your humanity based on where you spend your time, how you utilize your resources, maybe that will be more believable than even Christianity, Islam, or even constitutions of countries. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Yeah, there's a lot there. I certainly understand a lot of the skepticism and the sort of the church has done a lot of bad things in the past, so I can understand why people don't trust it or people have negative reactions toward it. And I don't blame you, and I certainly am not going to try to convince you otherwise.
I appreciate that.
But for me, it's just like a thing I like, and it's a thing I'm interested in. And there's just so much, and you can't really. Western culture and Christianity are just so intertwined that it's really hard to separate it. So even if you don't agree, even if you're not a Christian, I think that the study of Christianity and the study of church history is still worthwhile because it is the story of our heritage. So you can almost see it align from like the Protestant Reformation into the Enlightenment. So I mean, certainly dissent from the church has opened up people's minds and accelerated advancements and whatnot. But the church is still here; it hasn't gone away.
Okay.
So perhaps maybe the fact that it's been so enduring may speak to something. I don't know, but
Okay. But let me speak towards that point, and I hope I'm not taking too much of your time. Um, the reality is, for the main fact that it's still here, it doesn't necessarily mean like it's one of the best system, and so is like Islam on my basically all of these religions. But the main fact is just like someone being excited for civilization, like the advancements that the should I say the new world has brought, like technology or whatever. The people benefiting most from the technology will be those that they can't detach themselves from it, because it actually dramatically improves their standard of living, and they can actually benefit from this technology. But when the civilization doesn't like go all around the world, that it just benefits a certain people, then you find out like those are the people that will always support it. But if it's at the expense of the rest of the world, then it cannot last forever. It cannot last forever, just because those people that are not benefiting from that social civilization, they'll have to find their own civilization that will benefit them too. And so the balance is always like, this is how I say it. If someone has to step on somebody else in order to be on top, then somebody has to be on the bottom and the other person will stay on top. But if there is a way that you can be on top and I can still be on top without stepping on you, then that will be the real civilization, because I'm not going to undermine your civilization just because I want to be the one that is the topmost. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but in a nutshell, what I'm saying is people that are still basically very entwined with Christianity, it's probably because it works for them. It's a revelation that works for them. It's practical, it's theoretical, it's beneficiary, it's lucrative, it's supported by the laws of the land. So it will be very difficult to detach from that kind of indoctrination, especially if it works for you. But if it's at the expense of other people that it doesn't work for, then you don't have to expect them to actually believe like what works for you will work for them. I hope you understand what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, Ernie is still there? Yeah, Ola, we can
Are you
back.
asking me?
Yeah. Sorry for keeping you waiting. We're gonna circle back to Ola. I think you can go ahead.
Yeah, all right. I just have a couple of comments here, and then I may have to I won't be listening in quite as carefully. First of all, Justin, thank you for a great presentation. And Eric, thank you for bringing this thing on Zoom. I think there obviously were a couple of glitches, but you've done a great job, and you're doing some things uh, creatively in using Zoom that I have not seen other people do. You're doing a great job that way. There's still a few glitches, and we'll talk about those sometime. But that's great, Justin. Great presentation. I enjoyed it. I learned some things. Until a few weeks ago, I didn't even know what the encyclicals were. But a few weeks ago, Tim Bolger at the college gave a talk on the encyclicals, which was also pretty good. And I know between those two talks, I know a lot more than I knew before. I knew they existed. I didn't realize that they even existed and had level of importance. Now, you did imply that the Pope is not taken seriously, is not that important a man or something. I don't know your exact words.
No, I think
But what I would like to
you
do,
like it
what?
or not, he is.
Huh?
Whether you like it or not, he is.
I think he is. I would contend that the Pope is the most powerful person on the planet who does not have nuclear weapons or a large army at his disposal. Okay. And he has 1.6 million Christians, and even those who are not Catholic who look at him and take very seriously what he is doing. I think he's a very important person. And actually, I have a bunch of other things I'd like to comment on, but I'm going to have to step away for a while. I'm gonna stay logged on until the meeting is over, and maybe I can come back and we can have more of a conversation later. But again, thank you for a very good presentation.
And thanks, Ernie, for listening, and it's always good to hear from you and appreciate the comments.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something else has a question.
I think you're the next.
So I want to go back to picking on the what the Pope was saying, because I think you inspired this thought, right? Like, I think what he's saying only works if everyone sees human rights or sees things the same way. So, for example, when he was saying to let anyone migrate into your countries that wants to come and work and do stuff or whatever, right? Like, there's countless stories coming out of Europe about massive crimes and things that are happening. There's a huge crisis happening in Europe with migration. So what is the difference between encouraging something like that or versus accepting people that maybe have totally different values? It's like suicidal empathy. So what do I feel like he's sitting in the Vatican in his ivory tower with all the security in the world, like saying stuff that like on the street doesn't really pan out very well. And I'm just wondering what your comments are about that, because it's just not practical or realistic to me.
So I was paraphrasing, or I was ellipsing a lot of. I didn't read every single thing he wrote on that particular topic. There's actually a paragraph before it that I skipped over, and so it may be a little bit more nuanced than the paragraph I read. You're certainly right about even the Venezuelan migrants hasn't been a flawless process.
Yeah, I have my fiance has relatives in Colorado that were like very terrified about what was happening, where like there were like apartment takeovers and stuff like that, right?
I personally, I mean, statistically on the net, immigrants are beneficial. Certainly, certain groups are going to cause problems.
Agreed. So
And
what would the Pope, should you just keep like tolerating, or should
I
you
think
like get out of
the
here
Pope
and
would
take it over the
necessarily
apartment
think
building?
that you should completely sacrifice yourself for, I mean, well, Christ sacrificed himself, right? So I don't think it would still follow that you have to the state should bring in as many people as they want. You have to take care of them all without any limit. I don't think that is anything that they particularly endorse. I think that it's more of a refugee status situation. I think that comes from multiple instances throughout the Old and New Testament where, for example, Christ and his family had to escape first, the King Herod. It was codified in the old laws of the New Testament that you had to be nice and welcoming to sojourners in your land. So I think that is where the Pope gets that. But I don't think that is also an endorsement of bring them all in. I think what he's just saying is people should be able to, peaceful people.
And I agree. I was just
Should be able,
so I totally agree and understand. But yeah, like it's just
peaceful people should be able to reasonably be able to escape persecution if they can. I think is sort of the gist of it.
And then the thing about the weapons, right? Like, I mean, I think everyone agrees like violence is terrible and like the war is bad. But like Eric mentioned, in India, right, that recent terrorist attack that happened. So again, it's about like when the Pope says don't have weapons, he's assuming everyone thinks like him, because in that moment, when you have the people that believe a certain way, like they were checking if all the men were like circumcised, they were doing horrible things and then killing them. The only way to stop them in that moment, I mean, it sounds horrible, but it's to kill those guys, right? And to have the military or the personal weapons or a crossbow or whatever, right? To just neutralize that.
It was only the nuclear weapons
Okay.
that the Pope explicitly, in this instance, said to. He didn't say you can't have a defensive army. I may have skipped over it, but he does say that war, that you should be, you can defend your country. So I don't think that the Pope or the Church is necessarily, and then, do you have just war theory, which defined the Church going back to St. Augustine in like the 400s, 500, however long ago that was, which was also like, war should only be for defense and, whatever. So, only nuclear weapons was what he was saying that we should abolish. I don't think that he's opposed to countries having armaments for their own self-defense. So yeah, it was only nuclear. It was explicitly, and I, I don't know. Nuclear weapons are pretty damn scary, and when you first learn about nuclear weapons as a kid, I don't know about you guys, but I was like up all night and like, oh my god, like this could be bad. Now I live in a place where if the nukes go off, I won't know it, and I'll be okay with that. I'm fine with going out and not knowing it, being in a major U.S. city. But I just because nuclear war is bad and it's bad for the environment, as the Pope had said. There's something about nuclear weapons that are just on a Nagasaki and Hiroshima were nothing compared to the nuclear weapons they have now. The nuclear weapons they have now are to scale just so much bigger and and they were testing these things up until 1991, at least in the United States. So there's a lot of environmental and just decadence, I guess is the word I'm looking for, with how we had these weapons. And I think that is what the Pope is explicitly against, not so much the idea that you cannot defend yourself.
Well, if the church is against nuclear weapons, but the church is for or not against defending yourself. But if someone already have nuclear weapons, the second person, how can the second person effectively defend themselves without also owning nuclear weapons?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. That's kind of the predicament, though. Like you're right. Yeah, I mean, I can't answer that question, but it's a good point. But the good thing about this is it's a treatise, so it doesn't. It's trying to say this is what we ought to do. It doesn't say how we do it,
Right.
which I can't answer, and it's a good point. Mutually assured destruction is, the deterrent of owning nuclear weapons is certainly an argument people make for for having them. But for me, and I guess Pope John the 23rd, it's too much. We would prefer not to have them.
Does that apply also to the next type of warfare won't be nuclear at all, probably. It'll probably be like minuscule drones that massacre a bunch of people and they don't even know it, or some fancy warfare. So.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I just think that
perhaps there's later
a way.
Perhaps there's a latter encyclicals that touch on that sort of stuff. I haven't read any of the Francis encyclicals in detail, but yeah, you're right. There's perhaps at some point, Pope will have to talk about how nanobots going around. It's just
take us out.
Or even AI. What's the relationship with the church and society with AI? All those would be very interesting, and I'm sure hopefully might be addressed. We'll see anybody else.
Just want to change topics because I thought Ola brought up a really good point on this, and I feel it wasn't really addressed all that Well, but he was saying that governments control their people and religion controls its people, and that religion doesn't benefit people in the same way in different countries or regions of the world. Like right now, we have a system where we have controlling or the rich countries that control the world, and then the impoverished countries that support the rich countries through their mineral resources and so forth. And within these rich countries, they're taught, you know, all the same things that they're taught in the poor countries: be kind, be nice, be whatever. But there's a spin to you know, the poor countries and the rich countries. Like you know, the last sermon I attended, they were like, believe, 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 pray, 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 hate Muslims. And I'm like, okay, when did God teach that? But it's a form of control. Guide the people in their mindset, same way the government does with you know, media. And I don't live in a third world country. I don't live in a poor country. I live in a very entitled rich country. Where honestly we live like kings in our homes. We have the rights that poor countries don't have, but I would assume that they get taught to be nice and but suburb like to be obedient to the richer countries, like to be word
Subservient?
yes, subservient to the richer countries.
Fossils of the larger countries.
Yeah, so like right now we have this whole thing with Israel and Palestine, and the Christian churches are completely in line with the richer countries that are supporting Israel on this. Like,
The Christians where?
is there like
Which Christians are you talking about? All of them?
a good majority? I mean, the last.
How do you know?
Christian I
Did you
spoke
read the,
with-
was there a poll that you read the support?
Well. So there's.
I'm not gonna deny that
There's a lot of Christians within our government, and there are a lot of Zionists within our government at the same time, and a lot of those overlap, and based on how many Zionists we have in our government, that are Christian, I would say a good majority of Christians.
Okay, maybe that's true, but that's different than saying like Christians in general.
Yeah, I mean, of course, but.
Which I would disagree because I mean, you know, I don't really know too many gung-ho pro-Israeli people in my Christian circle of friends. In fact, I know one guy who has like a, you know, like a Palestinian button in his backpack. So, I mean, if you were to, as you did, qualify it by saying people in our government, yes, you have like the Pete Hegseths of the world. I find to be very repulsive, and I think that he's not. I mean, I hate to. I mean, I'm not like one to be like you're a fake Christian or you're a fake libertarian, but I think his religion is his idol is Donald Trump. You know what I'm saying? And you are right that there is a large influential segment within Christianity that is Zionist, that will defend Israel. But yeah, I don't think that's representative of all Christians.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a form of control, as Ola was saying, that the religion and government are in cahoots with each other and use it as
So-
a form of.
who in the what religion is in the United States in cahoots? Christianity?
Yeah, yeah, and
Is it, but okay, but Christianity has got several branches, several flows. So is it with the Pope?
well, I don't know a lot of Christians that agree with the Pope, honestly. But-
Well, the Pope is the leader of the biggest faction of them. So, but my point is that even Christians, to say that Christians, the Christianity is in, you have to, like, I don't think that the United States government is in cahoots with the Pope or the Catholic Church. The church, the government, of course, grants, nonprofit status to the churches, and the church allows people to voluntarily sort of give up their property in a way that, like, like regular working people, I can't work for Walmart like a way that, like, Franciscan friar works in his friary. But is government in cahoots with the Southern Baptist Convention? Maybe that might be true, but I mean, I don't.
Eric, please, can I chip in if whenever I have this opportunity? Can I?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. Um, the reality is, number one, Christianity has been divided into so many subsections. I really don't know what makes you redeem or angelical or whatever. It's divided into two, but obviously and hopefully everybody still believes in Jesus, because if the scriptures is still what it is, then what is causing this amount of division within the Christian community? That's one. And secondly, it's like let me just use 9/11 for an example, because when the attack happened at the World Trade Center, automatically almost every Muslim person in America and all around the world became a terrorist. And I promise you, it's not all Muslims that actually supported that type of um, activity. A lot of Muslims actually started coming out and pointing fingers like, we do not align with this. And basically, Muslims had to come out and represent, and even because they were automatically canopied with the terminology of being a terrorist. And they were obligated and responsible to start proving and telling people like, we totally disassociate with this type of act. Like, we are not like that. But I find that surprising, like in this present day that we are in, whereby we can see what's going on with the Palestine and Israel people, and yet everybody is making it seem like, well, that's not us. And the government itself is actually supporting it, and so people called Christians are not stepping up and like basically saying, you're not going to use our tax dollars to be performing this type of act. I'm not giving you, you're taking so much amount of my paycheck just to go and be bombing people. What's my business with the Palestinians or even Israelites? I'm worried about paying my regular bills and everything here, but yet you guys are using my money or the taxpayers' money to be funding such a terrorist act. If that kind of act would have happened by somebody else, they would have labeled it a terrorist act, whether it's by the government or by an individual. That would have made world news and everybody would start protesting and doing everything. But I'm wondering, like, why are the Christians, especially those that don't align with that action, where are they now? Why are they not being scrutinized like the Muslims were when 9/11 happened? Thank you.
I can't answer those questions because, I don't think that I think that in the wake of 9/11, our government did a lot of very bad things in terms of discrimination and profiling against Muslims and even people who weren't Muslims. I mean, if you had brown skin, Just because you have brown skin doesn't mean that you're Muslim. You could be Indian, you could be Hindu, you could be other things. You could even just be, you could be maybe just like a Hispanic
A
person.
mixture, yeah, you're right.
So I completely agree that there were a lot of negative things that our government had done post 9/11. I certainly do not agree with my tax dollars going to blow up children in Gaza. I think Israel can certainly defend itself. It's got nuclear weapons, so I mean, it should you know, I agree with you. There are Christians that are opposed to war. There's a group called Pax. Oh gosh, what are they called? Gosh. But I mean, you've got organizations like the Catholic Worker, which would be opposed to war. Pax Christi is what I was looking for. These are Pax Christi has used Pacem and terris as an inspiration in their mission. Is particularly in Catholicism, you have a lot of peace, crunchy, peaceful like I find the Vincentians, who are who are the order of priests and brothers that I like a lot and have some association with. I think they do a lot of things that would to be a Vincentian would be to oppose war. I would say they've hosted, in addition to other things like having consistent life ethic, where additionally they're opposed to war, they're also opposed to abortion and the death penalty. But there are Christians certainly who are calling for nuking the Middle East in the wake of 9/11, which to me doesn't seem like a very Christ-like act. George Bush invoked God quite a bit during those days. And I will not deny that a lot of horrible things have been done by Christians in the name of God. And that shouldn't be the case. And
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, please, can I intervene?
To go to be unchristlike.
Okay, please, can I get a word in?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. The reality is that's why we have to go back to humanity, because at some point I feel why the Christians or even Americans in general are not feeling empathetic enough to what's happening to those people on the other side by the war between Palestine and Israel is because they feel like they're not being affected directly. And that's the issue, because it doesn't have to happen to you as a human being before you realize how horrible it is. As long as you don't feel the effect and you are well protected in a privileged position, you can turn a blind eye. But the moment it comes close to your doorstep, that's when the humanity kicks in, the human rights, that's when everything starts becoming like the level gets turned up, and which doesn't even show the side of humanity if we are all being um religiously correct or trying to be humans, because the reality is we can't just what is not good, and what is good, and that's just how it has to play out wherever we find ourselves in this world. So the moment, like, as long as it's not happening to me, then I don't care. But if it's happening to me, then the whole world has to care. Like, this is the most horrible thing that ever happened in the entire history. That is actually very hypocritical. Thank you.
I think to Ola's point, it's fascinating, right? Because like before we had religion, didn't we all just live like nomads, right? In like small tribes and small groups or whatever. And then those small tribes and small groups would start fighting each other and doing stuff. I think even if we had like a big reset and we had this beautiful utopia, right? And like everything Ola says comes true, I think we would still self-organize right back to where we are right now. But that's just, and I'm not saying I agree with that or like that. I just don't know, right? Like, because I don't think people trust each other enough to,
Yeah, trust is
yeah.
everything. Trust is everything. Ultimately, it's the trust. But you can reset back to no religion. You kind of have to go very far. Depends on what you define as religion.
Yeah.
But there's a two level of things. If you look at this thing, there's one level is because we all believe, especially you'll go back to prehistorical era, we're barely out of a monkey stage. We definitely fear thunder. We fear natural disaster, and we attribute it to some kind of supernatural. You call it religion or a prototype of religion. So we always had that kind of mentality. So the question is, on different level, do we use that as a social order or as a control mechanism, if you will? Control, it's not, I use the word carefully. It's not like a bad thing. It's just middle. Control, you control your breath. You control your movement, right? You control the society's values. You control what's well. So we can have a common ground on what's good, what's bad. We have at least the base level of order. Then you have law. Law you can control the outward movement, that your behavior, your words, your expression. But religion or supernatural kind of mentality or existence controls inside. So we have two levels of control. You have two levels of the supernatural, how to deal with it. One is maybe your basic values. The other one is you use it as a social order kind of mechanism. So on that point, if you reset, the other side of the world, maybe not an equal size, but it can say that China, it doesn't use ever religion as a control mechanism for social order. They have a different value system, source of the value system. So, but they came to the way they did. The West came to the way they did. And if we reset, I would bet like 60% of chance they will still go the same way. But how did it split? How come we don't do the reverse? Or how come we don't unify, if you will, one way or the other? I don't know.
Okay.
There's a lot of thesis on that. So yeah.
That's a great point. Can I make a statement on that?
Of course, go ahead.
Okay. The reality is, I think I actually believe what you just said. Like, even if we actually research the whole genesis of being and everything replaced, like we might still end up in the same position every continent or nation fights itself. And why is that? It's because of the nature of who we are, what actually guides our decisions and what our principles are. Those are the main things that is actually making us different, because in this part of town, what I see as ethical might be forbidden on the other side of town. And each position has its valid reason why it's ethical and why it's forbidden. So at some point, that might put us in a situation whereby we might never see the things from the same viewpoint. Because, okay, let me just give you a plain example of what I mean. The people in Africa, they might still end up being enslaved all over again, because the Western world are still in that same situation that triggered them that forced them to make a move. Like, wow, we don't have no resources. It's cold here. We don't even know how to do this. So just based on that urge to find a better way of living, and all of a sudden they end up back in Africa and they realize like these people don't have to go through the weather change of every season. These people have actually resources right underneath them. So it leads to like, and how do they want to get that from the Africans, if not by tricking them or by robbing them or just by enforcing themselves? And so at the end of the day, and based on the principle and who Africans are, they will still end up perceiving like the Western world, like, oh, these are the people from the other side of the globe. Let's try and help them out. Not realizing like the Western world is not coming for tourism. They're actually looking for a means of survival. But the Africans will still look at them like, wow, you came all the way from that side of the globe. Let me show you our natural resources. Let me show you how everything is looking. And they're looking like, wow, these people are pretty dumb, man. We can take advantage of them. And so I wouldn't be surprised like if everything started from ground zero and we had to like redo everything all again, we might still end up in the same exact position just based on the notion and the conditions of the situations we find ourselves, like economic wise, intelligence wise, and the desperation to survive. Thank you.
Well, if that, yeah, everything being equal, if you will, if we just go all over again, there's no reason that I believe that we wouldn't end up the same way, right? Just like what I said. But if we had known, so this the different question is, if we had known if the ancestors had known that what we know today, and we reset, would they still go the same way?
Mm. Mm. Uh, do you want me to speak on that?
Well,
Or if
anyway,
somebody else want to talk?
you seem to have some thoughts, so go ahead,
Oh
please.
yeah, yeah. Definitely if we are like based on the experience like we are right now, like we've been through everything, and for some strange reason we have opportunity to start all over again, we won't end up in the same position because now we are wiser and we are not going to be so accommodating, because you can see the other nations are not that accommodating. You have to sacrifice an arm and a leg just to get into any other country, but other nations easily come into Africa. They don't have to do, all they have to do is just a thought. So like, oh, I'm going to Africa, and they will be there in a heartbeat. But if an African wants to go to the Western world or even China or you name it, Arab countries, you have to go through a tedious procedure just to get there. So what that means is it's very difficult for us to get into other people's nation because they secure their borders and they don't really want you there because of how they are. But it's easier for them to leave their borders and come and penetrate into Africa because of how we are. We just look, we still, the mentality over there is still kind of like, you guys can come. We would love to have you guys. Even someone that is working at should I say Walmart, like making basically minimum wage, can actually still go and say like he or she wants to go help people suffering in Africa, which is not realistic if you know the standard of living in, like how you need to try and help yourself first before you can even think about trying to go help someone in Africa. But it's possible because of the leverage. So it won't be the same because right now that we know like one of the strategic things to do is secure your borders, then we will put all these foreigners too into a check line. Like if you want to come here, you have to tell us your reason. You have to sell your house and your properties to get here because obviously you guys don't have what we have, and you have another motive for coming here. Actually, you don't even qualify to be here, and we will make sure we beef up our like naval and our military, and we wouldn't, our education would not be based on catering to the Western society, like learning about going out of space. Or if we're going to do that, we'll do that at our own pace. Our curriculum will be tailored towards our problems and how we are going to create solutions within the continent of Africa. because it seems like, sincerely, Africa is the only continent that doesn't need the world, but every other continent needs Africa. But yet, because of that same advantage that we have, we've been capitalized on, we've been extorted and extracted to be the poorest that depends on everybody else. So it's kind of like it's an irony actually. The richest continent is presented as the poorest continent that needs help, so everybody can have easy access to it with the notion of they're coming to help, whereas they are actually coming to exploit 80% of the time. So what they do is like they might give you some kind of help or some kind of trade and barter for that 20%, and use their media to cover it up and let you know like, oh, aid, we are sending water, we are sending food. How can there be food scarcity in Africa whereby the soil is so fertile, like even without planting anything, things grow easily? So that's a fabricated problem. It's not really a natural problem. So now that we know everything that we know, I don't think it will be a lot easier for like any intruder to come to Africa and tell us like they're coming to help us, because we know like we are the blessed continent, and every other continent actually needs us desperately than we need them. So I don't think it would happen like that. But in the situation that we're living in now, it feels like Africa needs every other continent desperately than they need us, which is not necessarily true, but just based on the condition like the human world is, that's how it's being played out. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure we have a chance to really talk about Africa, don't we?
Oh, definitely. I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited. Like the next time we meet up, and I'll make sure I send you the whole outline so you can have an idea and you won't be too surprised.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah, how about volunteer the first answer? If the ancestors had known what we know today, what would the Western world do? What would they do? I mean, your ancestors, not you, not the contemporary people. What would they have done if they had known what we know today? What would the Western European or Europeans do? Christian world people. Let's put it that way.
I think it depends on who you ask, because
That's right. That's right.
because I mean, there's nobody's gonna be happy in a society. Not at least not everybody's gonna be happy in a society. If we all made rules saying, thou shalt not kill, we're gonna have somebody born into that society that wants to kill. And they're not gonna be happy with the thou shalt not kill rule. So it really depends on who you ask.
I think if I ask the Pope, like you said, Pope, they live there in their ivory tower, they're on their high horse about morality, they preach everybody. They have a high ideal, but probably not very realistic.
But not very
So-
quiet.
Realistic. So the Pope, I would argue the Pope would be happy, although they look worrisome, they look worried, oh, the world is at war, people are suffering. But hey, if you ask them, would you be happier to be Pope or not to be Pope? He'd probably choose, if he'd be honest with me. He said, I'd rather be Pope. But how can you top that? You get to be on your high horse, you don't have to worry about paying bills. Of course, you worry about things, you have to manage Vatican, you have corruptions, you have to watch for that, you have to watch the budget, and you have whole struggle under you, have to still gotta manage all those people, those are not easy people to manage. But ultimately, you can't top that, I mean, he has his worries, right? He may have health issues, so who doesn't at a certain age, right? But relative to other people, relative to himself, in a different situation, I think he should be happy. He should be
I
happy.
don't know, there's a lot of really good situations you could end up in that don't have so many responsibilities, you could.
Yeah.
You could be rich and on a island beach, with
That's true. That's true.
I just don't think we're any better than our ancestors, like in the sense, like, I think the zeitgeist today is that people think they're somehow more evolved than everyone else. We're somehow more special. It's a form of like chronological narcissism. And it is, like, and I just don't, like, I'm trying to like teleport myself to my ancestors, right? And, my ancestors were under Turkish rule for 400 years. They're gonna say rock on Christianity, right? Because like they needed to overthrow the Turks and oust the Sharia law and all of that, right? So it really matters who you ask and what circumstances they're under, right? Like if I reincarnated one of my ancestors from like 200 years ago, like, I can't believe you're even debating this, right? Like, and they are no better or no worse than us. So I'm very skeptical that anything really changes. And I think like you look at like the Westerners or anyone like any civilization, Chinese civilization or whatever, right? Like everyone's going to bend reality to make it make sense to them. And I think that's a very human characteristic, and we're all guilty of that. So if you were talking about like the Native Americans, I'm sure there were some settlers that thought what was happening to them was very wrong, but I'll bet even more of them didn't even see them as human. They saw them as just alien. Like, and again, I'm not agreeing with my own words, but they were probably like, these are just savage people that we have to civilize, and it's our duty to save them, right? Like, so if you were to ask them, go back 100 years and ask them, like, they would say something like that. Like, and nowadays, we're gonna find other ways to impose things on people, and it'll take a totally different form, and it'll be in the name of thinking that we're doing something good. And I don't know, maybe I just have a very cynical view of the world, but it'll show up in a form that's not obvious to us because we think we're doing so good. But then 100 years from now, someone might look back at us and say, how did they do that? Anyway,
I think we have better tools, definitely, but our nature, this between ears, we didn't really, the tissue between our ears, we didn't really have evolved ahead of the people probably 1,000 to 5,000, 10,000 years ago. It will take a lot longer. But I think we know, knowledge-wise, it depends on your wisdom, how you use your knowledge. But knowledge-wise, I know more than Julius Caesar. Sure, he doesn't know beyond his death, but I'm 2,000 years beyond his death. If I read, I will know. But that doesn't mean I'm more wise. So knowledge is one thing, wisdom is another. But at least you have the knowledge. If you have the wisdom, you have something to work with. But Julius Caesar doesn't have that piece of knowledge to work with, even though he may have higher wisdom. So that's our advantage. So we're slightly better, but nature is not better. But we have something to work with. Potentially you can get better.
it would be nice, but I'm just skeptical.
I have to ride my bike way up north, so I think I'm gonna have to get off take off here in a few minutes. But thank you guys for coming out and being part of this.
Oh, thank you so
discussion.
much for entertaining some of my questions. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Justin, for bringing this to us. Because it was your idea. I had no idea. People come to me.
Yeah.
I can put together, right? This is people's idea. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, like the Tim, thank you.
Yeah.
Tim, you mentioned Tim earlier, or maybe it was Ernie. But yeah, Tim's presentation inspired this because I had like Tim's topic was actually something I was like, oh, I should do something on Rio Navarro. So Tim like jumped on that. So this I thought was the next best thing. And with the new Pope and with like everything going on in the world, I thought it was very appropriate to discuss. So, and I'm personally interested in it.
It's great.
But
Yeah, thank you. Hope you could come back to speak to us sometime. We
Yeah.
have other ideas. All right, so I think we'll adjourn this meeting. I'm gonna stop the recording. Thanks people from the
All right,
Zoom.
thank you.
See you
Have a
soon.
nice day. It was nice
When you
participating.
get a chance, can let me know your input. I really need it. All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.